The Regal Heights Grand Hotel was a big, fancy hotel in the middle of Los Angeles. It was super expensive and beautiful, with shiny glass windows that reflected the golden sunset. Rich and famous people stayed there all the time. Everything inside was fancy, huge chandeliers, soft carpets from Italy, and workers dressed in neat uniforms. At the front desk, Lillian Carter stood tall, wearing her neat navy blue blazer. She was the receptionist, but she thought of herself as more important. She decided who deserved the fancy hotel and who didn't. She could always tell who belonged and who didn't. One evening, a young woman walked into the hotel. She was dressed simply, Matthews, a white t-shirt, sneakers, and a plain backpack. Her long dark hair was tied back in a ponytail. She didn't have an expensive purse or fancy jewelry. Lillian frowned. She thought, she doesn't look rich. Maybe she's here to sneak in. The young woman walked up to the desk and smiled. "Hi, I have a reservation under the name A. Reeves," she said. Lillian raised an eyebrow. The name Reeves sounded familiar, but she ignored it. She had seen many people pretend to be rich just to get a free room. "Excuse me?" Lillian said, acting cold. Sienna smiled again. "I already booked a room. My name is Sienna Vaughn." Lillian laughed. "Sweetheart, this is the Regal Heights Grand Hotel. A room here costs $2,000 a night. Maybe you should try one of the cheap hotels down the street." Sienna's smile faded, but she stayed calm. "There must be a mistake. I already paid for my room." Lillian rolled her eyes. She had seen people try this trick before. "Listen, sweetheart," Lillian said in a fake sweet voice. "We don't let people just walk in. This is a 5-star hotel. Not everyone can afford it." Sienna took a deep breath. She didn't like using her father's name to get special treatment. But now she was angry. She pulled out her phone and called her dad. "Hey Dad," she said. On the other end of the phone, her father's voice was calm. "How's the suite?" "Well, I wouldn't know," Sienna said. "The receptionist won't let me check in." There was silence for a second, then her father chuckled. "Stay right there, sweetheart," he said. "I'll be there in 5 minutes." Sienna smiled to herself. Lillian had no idea what was coming. 15 minutes later, a shiny black Rolls-Royce pulled up in front of the hotel. The doorman stood up straight and the valet workers got ready. Some guests turned their heads to look. The doors opened and Keanu Reeves stepped out of the car. He wore a black designer suit and walked with quiet confidence. People whispered and stared. But Lillian? She was too busy on her phone to notice. Until she heard a voice next to her whisper, "Oh my gosh, that's Keanu Reeves." Lillian's smile disappeared. She snapped her head up and saw him walking straight toward her desk. Her stomach dropped. Before she could say anything, Sienna waved and said, "Dad, over here." Lillian froze. "Dad? No way." Sienna Vaughn was Keanu Reeves' daughter? Her mind spun. She had insulted, belittled, and turned away the daughter of the man who owned the hotel. She was in trouble. Keanu stopped at the desk, his dark eyes calm but serious. "Is there a problem here?" he asked, his voice smooth but with a sharp edge. Lillian started panicking. Mr. Reeves, sir, I didn't realize." Sienna crossed her arms. "She said I didn't look like I belonged here. She told me to try a cheap motel." Lillian's face turned pale. Keanu tilted his head, his face impossible to read. "Is that true?" Lillian stumbled over her words. "I didn't mean it like that, sir. I was just following protocol." Keanu slowly nodded. Then he turned to the hotel's general manager, who had just rushed over, looking terrified. "Is this how we treat guests at my hotel?" Keanu asked. The manager's face was red. "No, sir. Absolutely not. This is unacceptable." Keanu turned back to Lillian. "What's your name?" "V. Lillian, sir." His voice stayed calm but firm. "Lillian, you just turned away my daughter without even checking the reservation system." Lillian opened her mouth but closed it again. She had no excuse. Keanu sighed. "I built this hotel with respect. Every guest, no matter how they look, should be treated with kindness. And you failed." Lillian wanted to vanish. Keanu turned to the manager. "Find someone more qualified to replace her. Effective immediately." Lillian's legs felt weak. "Sir, please?" "What?" Keanu didn't even look at her. He simply took Sienna's hand and walked toward the elevator. Lillian stood there, humiliated and fired. Justice was served. Lillian thought she was untouchable. She had worked hard to climb up in the hotel business. She acted like a professional, but deep down she judged people harshly. Now she was fired. Worse, everyone saw it happen. The doormen, the valet workers, the maids, people she had been rude to. Some of them were even happy to see her go. She clutched her expensive handbag and stormed out of the hotel. Her heart pounded in anger. This isn't over. She wanted revenge. As she walked down the street, her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. I heard what happened. Maybe we can help each other. Lillian frowned. Help each other? She quickly typed back, who is this? A few seconds later, another message came. Meet me at Café Royale in 30 minutes. Let's talk. Lillian stared at her phone, her heart pounding. Who was this person? And what did they want? Lillian arrived at Café Royale right on time. It was a fancy coffee shop with gold chandeliers and soft jazz music playing. She spotted a man in a gray suit sitting by the window, sipping an espresso. He looked calm and confident. She walked over. You're the one who texted me? The man smirked and put down his coffee cup. I am. My name is Dorian Steele. I work in PR for rich and powerful people. And I think I can help you. Lillian crossed her arms. Why would I need your help? Dorian chuckled. Because, he said, you just got fired from one of the most famous hotels in the city, publicly, by one of the most beloved celebrities in the world. Lillian gritted her teeth. Dorian leaned closer. I fix things. Right now your story is a disaster. But if we play this right, he smiled, we can turn you into a victim. What would happen next? Would Lillian and Dorian try to ruin Sienna's reputation? Would Sienna and Keanu see it coming? Karma was already at work, and things were just getting started. Lillian narrowed her eyes. Go on. Dorian smiled. We tell a different story. One where Sienna Vaughn is the spoiled daughter of a rich Hollywood star who abuses her power. One where you were just a hard-working woman trying to do your job, and you got fired for no good reason. Lillian's eyes widened. Dorian nodded. People love scandals. And they love bringing down the rich even more. If we make this public, we can ruin Sienna Vaughn's reputation overnight. A slow smile spread across Lillian's lips. This was exactly what she needed. I'm in. The smear campaign began. Within 24 hours, social media exploded with shocking headlines. Reeves' daughter uses dad's power to fire an innocent worker. Shocking secrets. The truth behind Sienna Vaughn's entitlement. Hotel worker says she was fired by a spoiled celebrity kid. Keanu Reeves not as nice as you think? The comments were brutal. If this is true, Sienna Vaughn is just another spoiled rich girl. This is so unfair. That poor hotel worker. Keanu Reeves? I thought he was kind. Guess I was wrong. Rich kids always get their way. Disgusting. It didn't take long for the hotel's social media pages to be filled with complaints. People were angry. Meanwhile, inside a fancy hotel penthouse, Sienna stared at her phone in horror. Dad, look at this, she whispered. Keanu Reeves took the phone from her and scrolled through the articles. His jaw tightened. They're trying to destroy your reputation, Sienna said, her voice shaking. Keanu set the phone down calmly. No, sweetheart, he said. They're trying to destroy ours. Sienna clenched her fists. What do we do? Keanu took a deep breath and looked out over the city. Then he smirked. We fight back. Sienna sat on the couch, her phone buzzing non-stop. Every few seconds, another notification popped up. People were saying terrible things about her. The whole world had decided she was guilty without knowing the truth. Keanu sat across from her, his face calm but serious. He read the latest news articles, his name being twisted into something ugly. He had spent years being kind to everyone. He had donated millions to charity, treated his fans with love and respect. And now, one fake scandal was trying to ruin it all. Sienna looked up at her father. Dad, we have to do something. This is getting out of control. Keanu put his phone down and leaned back in his chair. The truth always comes out, Sienna, he said simply. Sienna frowned. Yeah, but by the time it does, the internet ruins people first. If we don't do something now, this story will stick. Keanu's eyes remained sharp. Then let's make sure we control the story. Sienna sat up straighter. Do you have a plan? Keanu smirked. I always do. Keanu Reeves wasn't just a famous actor. He was a smart businessman. If someone thought they could take him down, they had made a big mistake. He called his lawyers and PR team. Find out where these lies are coming from, he told them. Within hours, they had answers. Every bad news article, every social media post, it all came from one source. An anonymous tip from someone inside the hotel. And that someone was Lillian Carter. The PR firm spreading the fake news? It was owned by Dorian Steele. He was known for creating fake scandals about celebrities to make money. Keanu smiled. They had everything they needed to fight back. Keanu knew one thing about people who spread lies. They never expected to get caught. So instead of just telling the truth, he decided to set a trap. Sienna was unsure. "Are you sure this will work?" Keanu smirked. "Trust me, sweetheart. People like Lillian and Dorian are greedy. Their greed will be their downfall." Keanu had one of his lawyers pretend to be from a rival PR agency. They contacted Dorian Steele's firm and made an offer. "We'll pay you a lot of money," they said, "if you can find more dirt on Keanu Reeves and his daughter." Dorian Steele took the bait immediately. Within 24 hours, he was on a private call bragging about everything. He admitted he created the entire scandal. He said Lillian fed him lies. He even talked about how much money he made from the fake story. What Dorian didn't know: the entire conversation was being recorded. Game over. The next day, Keanu held a press conference. The media had been following him, waiting to hear his side of the story. He walked up to the microphone with a serious expression. Then he played the recording. The room went silent. Journalists scrambled to write down everything. And then Keanu delivered the final blow. "I have always treated people with kindness and respect. I have never used my power unfairly, nor has my daughter. This was an attack to destroy our reputation. And the evidence speaks for itself." He looked straight into the cameras. "I will be taking legal action against Dorian Steele and Lillian Carter for lying and trying to ruin our names." The internet exploded again, but this time in Keanu's favor. Keanu Reeves is a legend. He exposed the liars. Never mess with the internet's favorite celebrity. Lillian got what she deserved. Karma. Dorian Steele's career is over. Lillian Carter? Blacklisted. No hotel in Los Angeles would hire her again. Dorian Steele? His PR firm collapsed overnight. No one trusted him anymore. And Sienna? She walked away with her head held high, knowing her father would always protect her. That evening, Keanu and Sienna sat on their balcony, looking over the city. Sienna sighed. "I still don't understand how people can be that cruel." Keanu took a sip of his tea before answering. "Because power makes some people greedy. They think they can control the truth." Sienna smirked. "But they forgot one thing, didn't they?" Keanu grinned. "What's that?" Sienna leaned back in her chair. "The truth always wins." Keanu chuckled and nodded. "That it does, kid. That it does." And with that, they closed the chapter on a battle well fought, knowing that no matter what came next, they would always have each other's back. The scandal faded after Keanu exposed Dorian and Lillian. The internet rallied behind him, and Sienna's name was finally cleared. Lillian? Gone. Dorian? Ruined. Justice was served. But as Keanu always said, life had a way of throwing challenges when you least expected them. And this time, it wouldn't just be about a reputation. It would be about something much bigger. Sienna makes a big decision. Sienna had always been known as Keanu Reeves' daughter. People treated her differently because of it. Some were nice to her because they wanted to be friends with a famous actor. Others were mean and thought she got everything easily. But Sienna wanted to do something on her own. She didn't want to live in her father's shadow. One day, something inside her changed. She wanted to make a big decision. She sat with her father on the rooftop of their house. Flowers and lights made the garden beautiful. She took a deep breath. "Dad, I think I'm ready to leave," she said. Keanu, who was drinking his tea, put his cup down. He looked at her for a moment, thinking. "Where do you want to go?" he finally asked. Sienna smiled a little. "Paris. I want to learn about hotels. Not because I have to, but because I want to. I don't want to just take something easy. I want to work hard and make something of my own." Keanu's lips curled into a small smile. He had been waiting for this moment. "I always knew you would make your own way," he said. Sienna felt happy that her father understood. But neither of them knew that someone was still angry at them. Someone dangerous. Someone who wanted revenge. Some people lose everything and try to start fresh. But not Lillian Carter. She had worked in fancy hotels for many years. But one mistake had taken it all away. She lost her job, her power, and her good name. And she blamed Keanu and Sienna for it. She tried to find a new job, but no one wanted to hire her. Everyone knew about what had happened. She was stuck. No job. No power. No future. Then one day she got a strange email. The subject said, "I can help you get revenge." Lillian's heart pounded as she clicked it open. The message was from someone she didn't know. They said they had strong connections. They wanted to take down Keanu Reeves just like she did. The email had an address and a time for a secret meeting. Lillian's hands shook. She had nothing to lose. That made her dangerous. A few weeks later, Sienna stood in the airport ready to fly to Paris. Her father was next to her, wearing his black leather jacket and Matthews. Everyone knew him as a cool movie star. But today he was just a dad saying goodbye to his daughter. "You know you don't have to do this alone, right?" Keanu asked. Sienna smiled. "I know, but I want to. I need to." Keanu sighed and gave her a big hug. "Then go show the world what Sienna Vaughn can do." Sienna grinned, kissed his cheek, and grabbed her bag. She walked to the plane, feeling free and excited. A new chapter of her life was starting. But she didn't know that trouble was already following her. Lillian arrived at the meeting place. It was a private club hidden from the public. The air smelled like cigars and expensive drinks. Rich and powerful people sat around talking in low voices. At the center of it all sat a man in a dark suit. His face was half hidden in the shadows. Lillian took a deep breath and walked up to him. "I got your email," she said. The man slowly turned to look at her. "Good. Then we can begin." Lillian narrowed her eyes. "Who are you?" The man smiled. "Someone who dislikes Keanu Reeves as much as you do." Lillian had expected a small-time criminal, not someone like this. He seemed powerful. More powerful than she had imagined. He slid a folder across the table. She opened it and gasped. Inside were secret papers, Keanu's business records, private contracts, and more. "Where did you get this?" she whispered. The man's smile grew. "I have my ways. Now let's talk about what we're going to do next." Lillian swallowed hard. She didn't know who this man was, but she knew one thing. He had power. And for the first time in a long time, she felt powerful too. Thousands of miles away, Sienna landed in Paris. The city was beautiful. The smell of fresh bread filled the air. Musicians played in the streets. Everything felt perfect. That night, Sienna walked home from a small cafe. She sipped her coffee and smiled. She was happy. Then she saw it. A black SUV was parked across the street. At first she ignored it. But as she walked faster, the SUV slowly rolled forward, moving at the same speed as her. Her heart pounded. She turned a corner. The SUV followed. Sienna clenched her fists. Something wasn't right. Deep down, she knew this wasn't just a coincidence. She had left her home to start a new life. But the past wasn't done with her yet. The night air was cool and smelled like sweet pastries. Paris had always felt like magic to Sienna. But tonight something felt wrong. She felt eyes on her. The black SUV that followed her earlier was now parked across the street from her apartment. Its headlights were dim but still on. She couldn't see inside because the windows were dark. But she knew someone was inside. And they were watching her. Her heart pounded, but she forced herself to act normal. If she panicked, they would know she noticed them. She walked up the steps to her apartment, unlocked the door, and slipped inside quickly. Then she locked the door behind her. She peeked out the window. The SUV was still there. Its engine was still running. Sienna's mind raced. Who could be following her? She had come to Paris to escape the past. But it seemed like the past had followed her. She grabbed her phone. She didn't want to do this, but she had no choice. She called her father. Keanu was back in Los Angeles, but he couldn't stop thinking about Sienna. He had supported her dream to move to Paris, but he was always protective of her. He had seen too many things in his life. He knew how fast the world could turn dangerous. When his phone rang and he saw Sienna's name, his heart tightened. "Dad." Her voice was soft but worried. "Sienna, what's wrong?" he asked immediately. There was silence for a moment. Then she whispered, "I think someone is watching me." Keanu sat up straight. His body tensed. "Tell me everything." As Sienna explained about the black SUV, Keanu's face darkened. Something wasn't right. This wasn't just a random event. He could feel it. "Listen to me," he said firmly. "Lock your doors. Don't go anywhere alone. I'm sending someone to you." "Dad, I don't want to overreact," Sienna said. "This isn't overreacting," Keanu said. "I know when something bad is coming. And I think something big is about to happen." Sienna swallowed hard. She trusted her father. And in that moment she knew one thing for sure. She wasn't as safe as she thought she was. And someone out there wanted to hurt her. Late at night, Keanu's phone rang. He looked at the screen and saw his daughter Sienna's name. His heart started beating faster. "Hey, sweetheart," he said, trying to sound calm. But inside he was very alert. "Dad, I think someone is following me," Sienna said. Her voice was steady, but he could hear she was scared. Keanu sat up straight in bed. All his sleepiness was gone. "Tell me everything," he said. Sienna explained that a big black SUV had been following her through the streets. Now it was parked right outside her apartment. Keanu was silent for a moment. His mind was working fast, trying to figure out what was going on. Then he took a deep breath and said, "Sienna, listen to me. Don't look out of your windows. Don't open the door for anyone. Stay inside. I will handle this." Sienna hesitated. "Dad, what if I'm just imagining things?" Keanu's jaw tightened. "I don't believe in coincidences, sweetheart. Especially after what happened with Lillian and Dorian." Sienna's stomach felt tight with fear. Lillian? Could she be behind this? Before Sienna could ask, Keanu spoke again, his voice strong and serious. "I'm getting on the next flight to Paris. Don't do anything until I get there." Sienna knew her father well. When Keanu Reeves said he was going to fix something, he meant it. Far away in a tall building in Los Angeles, Lillian Carter sat in a big chair. She held a glass of wine and looked out the window at the bright city lights. Across from her sat a man. He had contacted her a few weeks ago, offering help. His name was Leonardo Moretti. He was powerful, rich, and very dangerous. Lillian had lost her last ally, Dorian Steele. But now she had found someone even stronger. Leonardo was a big businessman in Europe. He had connections with the government, private spies, and billion-dollar companies. And he hated Keanu Reeves. "You said you wanted revenge," Leonardo said, swirling his glass of whiskey. "I can give it to you." Lillian leaned forward. "And what do you want in return?" Leonardo smirked. "Keanu Reeves has been a problem for me for years. He refused my business deals. He cost me millions of dollars. If I take him down, I want it to be forever." Lillian swallowed. She wanted revenge on Keanu, but this was something much darker. "What are you planning?" she asked carefully. Leonardo leaned forward. "His daughter, Sienna, is now in my city," he said. "And I will make sure she never leaves." Lillian's heart pounded. "You want to use his daughter?" Leonardo smirked. "Keanu is careful. He never makes mistakes. But when it comes to Sienna," he took a sip of his drink, "that's his weakness. And we're going to use it." Lillian hesitated. She wanted revenge. But was she ready to cross this line? Before she could answer, Leonardo stood up. "It's already in motion," he said. And just like that, the decision was made for her. The next morning, Sienna decided not to be afraid anymore. Maybe she had imagined the danger. Maybe the SUV wasn't really following her. She wasn't going to live in fear. But as she walked down the quiet streets of Paris, she felt it again. That creepy feeling that someone was watching her. She turned a corner. The black SUV was there again. This time it wasn't parked. It was moving. And it was following her. Sienna's breath caught in her throat. She walked faster, turning down different streets, trying to lose them. But they stayed right behind her. Then suddenly the SUV sped up and stopped right in front of her. Two men in dark suits stepped out. Sienna knew this wasn't just someone watching her. They were here to take her. She turned and ran. Her heart pounded. Her lungs burned. She dodged people on the sidewalk trying to escape. She ran into a crowded cafe, gasping for breath. She looked around, searching for a way out. The men stopped outside, scanning the crowd for her. Sienna grabbed her phone, her hands shaking, and dialed her father's number. He picked up immediately. "Dad," she whispered, her voice shaking, "they found me." There was a short silence. Then Keanu's voice came through, calm but dangerous. "Where are you?" She gave him the address. His response was immediate. "Stay put. I'm on my way." For the first time, Sienna saw a side of her father she had never seen before. He wasn't just a kind Hollywood star. He was a man ready to do whatever it took to protect his daughter. And someone had just made the biggest mistake of their lives. Keanu never panicked. Even in dangerous situations, he stayed calm and planned every move. But this was different. This was about Sienna. And that changed everything. The moment Sienna's scared voice came through the phone, Keanu was already moving. His private jet was waiting at the airport, ready to take off. He made a call. "I need eyes on my daughter. Now." Minutes later, he got a response. "She's in a cafe. Two men are watching her. They haven't made a move yet." Keanu's grip on his phone tightened. He closed his eyes, taking a deep breath. When he opened them, his mind was clear. "Keep her safe," he said. "I'll be there in 11 hours. His jet took off, speeding toward Paris. And so did Keanu Reeves' revenge. Inside the cafe, Sienna forced herself to stay calm. She sat at a small table, her hands wrapped around a cup of coffee. The coffee was cold. She hadn't touched it. Outside, the two men were still there, pretending to be casual. But she knew they were waiting for her to leave. She looked around. The cafe was full of tourists and locals. If she made a scene, the men wouldn't be able to grab her easily. But the moment she stepped outside, she would be in danger. She took a deep breath, trying to remember what her father had taught her. Stay aware. Look for escape routes. Never show fear. She spotted a door at the back of the cafe. A staff-only exit. It led to an alley. It was risky, but she had no choice. She stood up, stretched, and walked toward the back. She acted like she was just going to the restroom. She didn't look back. She pushed open the door and ran. She came out into a busy market. The smell of fresh bread and coffee filled the air. She pushed past people, trying to disappear into the crowd. The men were still following her, but now they are struggling to keep up. She saw a taxi parked nearby. The driver was smoking a cigarette and looking at his phone. Sienna ran to the car, yanked open the door, and jumped in. Go. Drive? She gasped, throwing a big bill at the driver. The driver hesitated for just a second. Then he hit the gas. The taxi sped away just as the men reached the curb. Sienna looked back, watching them disappear. She had escaped. For now. By the time Keanu's jet landed in Paris, he already knew everything. Sienna was safe for now. The men after her were professionals. And Lillian Carter was involved. He stepped off the plane, his face serious. A black duffel bag was slung over his shoulder. Waiting for him was an old friend, Matthew Laurent, a former French intelligence agent. It was time to hunt. Jean Laurent had seen a lot of danger in his life. He looked at Keanu with a serious face and gave him a small nod. Your daughter was lucky this time, Jean Laurent said. But the bad guys will come for her again. Keanu's jaw tightened. He was angry. Then we won't wait for them, he said. We will go after them first. Jean Laurent smiled. I was hoping you would say that. The two men got into a black Mercedes and sped toward where Sienna was staying. Keanu had only two things on his mind: find out who was behind this and make them regret ever trying to hurt his daughter. Sienna sat in a small, safe apartment. She was still scared from the chase, but when her father walked in, she felt safe again. Keanu hugged her tightly, his arms strong and protective. Are you hurt? He asked in a low, serious voice. Sienna shook her head. No, Dad. But these guys weren't just normal criminals. They knew who I was. Keanu's eyes darkened. I know. Sienna hesitated, then asked, Dad, what are you going to do? Keanu turned to Jean Laurent. Find them. Jean Laurent nodded. I already did. He pulled out his phone and showed Keanu live video footage from secret cameras placed around Paris. On the screen, two black SUVs were parked outside an old, empty warehouse. Jean Laurent smirked. They think Sienna is still running. They have no idea we are here. Keanu's face showed no emotion. He didn't say a word. Instead, he picked up a heavy bag and walked toward the door. Sienna felt a knot in her stomach. Dad. Keanu stopped and looked at her with calm determination. They tried to take my daughter, he said in a cold, unforgiving voice. Then he walked out. And Sienna knew this wasn't just about keeping her safe anymore. This was about stopping the bad guys once and for all. The warehouse was dark and filled with wooden boxes and scattered tools. Keanu moved quietly like a shadow. Jean Laurent was on the other side, ready to help. Inside, the men who had chased Sienna were talking, waiting. They had no idea what was coming. Keanu stepped forward and spoke in a calm but dangerous voice. Looking for someone? The men froze. They turned around quickly. And then everything went crazy. Fists flew. Bodies hit the ground. Keanu fought with skill and strength, taking down the bad guys one by one. He had already guessed that Lillian was involved, but now he had a new name, Leonardo Moretti. That name was powerful. That name meant this was bigger than just revenge. Keanu let go of the last man, who collapsed to the ground in pain. He turned to Jean Laurent. Get Sienna. We're leaving. Jean Laurent nodded, but his face was serious. Keanu, this isn't over. Keanu knew that. And that's why he was going to finish it. In a tall, fancy building in the rich part of Paris, Leonardo Moretti sat in his big office. He drank a glass of expensive red wine. He was a rich man, a powerful man, someone who worked in the shadows and controlled important businesses. He already knew the plan had failed. He wasn't surprised. Keanu Reeves was just as dangerous as he had expected. Leonardo smirked and put down his glass. It seems Mr. Reeves isn't someone we can mess with. Across from him sat Lillian Carter. She looked pale, scared. She wanted revenge, but she didn't think this would turn into a war. What now? She asked, her voice shaking. Leonardo leaned back in his chair, putting his hands together in thought. Now, he said, we make him come to us. Lillian frowned. How? Leonardo's smirk grew wider. We take away what he loves most. Sienna was packing her bags. She was ready to leave Paris and go home to Los Angeles, where she would be safe with her father. She zipped up her suitcase when she suddenly heard a knock on the door. Her heart pounded. Her father had said he would call before sending anyone. She hesitated, then walked to the door. "Who is it?" Silence. Then the door burst open. Two men rushed in, grabbing her before she could scream. She kicked and fought, but they were too strong. One of them pressed a cloth over her mouth. Her vision blurred. Everything started to fade. The last thing she saw was Lillian Carter standing in the doorway, smiling coldly. Then everything went black. Keanu Reeves was always a patient man. He was known for his kindness, his calm nature, his ability to stay in control. But when he got the call that Sienna had been taken, something inside him snapped. This was no longer about being careful. This was no longer about reputation. This was personal. He stood in the middle of his hotel room, gripping his phone so tightly his knuckles turned white. Jean Laurent stood beside him. "We know where they took her." Keanu's dark eyes burned with anger. "Then let's go get my daughter." Leonardo Moretti's private mansion was like a fortress. Guards walked around, keeping watch. Security cameras covered every entrance. High walls surrounded the estate. It was impossible to break in, for anyone else. But Keanu wasn't just anyone. Under the cover of night, Keanu and Jean Laurent moved silently. One by one the guards fell. The two men reached the main entrance. By now the entire mansion was in chaos. Keanu stormed inside, his footsteps calm but deadly. Lillian was waiting in the hallway, smirking. "You're too late." Keanu's fist smashed into her face before she could finish her sentence. She collapsed, holding her jaw in shock. He didn't care. He wasn't playing nice anymore. He moved through the mansion like a storm, taking down anyone who got in his way. Finally he found her. Sienna was tied to a chair, her face pale but alive. Beside her stood Leonardo Moretti. He smiled. "You're impressive, Mr. Reeves. But do you really think you're getting out of here alive?" Keanu tilted his head slightly. His voice was quiet but dangerous. "I don't think so." "I know." In a flash, he grabbed a metal tray from the table and smashed it into Leonardo's face, knocking him to the ground. Jean Laurent shot out the lights. Darkness filled the room. Gunfire erupted, but Keanu moved fast, his training kicking in. Minutes later, every guard was down. Leonardo groaned, struggling to his feet. Keanu grabbed him by the collar. "If you ever come near my daughter again, I will end you." Leonardo coughed, laughing weakly. "You think this is over?" Keanu's eyes were cold. "No. I know it is." And with that, he knocked Leonardo out. Back in Los Angeles, Sienna sat on the balcony with her father, sipping tea. She looked at him with love and gratitude. "Thank you." Keanu smiled. "For what?" Sienna took a deep breath. "For always coming for me." Keanu wrapped his arm around her, holding her close. Always. The danger was over. The threats were gone. Finally, they could breathe again. But if there was one lesson everyone learned from this, no one messes with Keanu Reeves. If you enjoyed this story, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below and let me know what you think. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more exciting stories filled with adventure, mystery, and unforgettable moments. Your support means the world. It keeps these stories coming and the creativity flowing. Thanks for watching, and I can't wait to see you in the next video.